Hey guys, welcome to the top 10 of the greatest NBA teams of all time. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to let us know you enjoy our weekly content. Now let's get into the top 10. Number 10, the 2014-2015 Golden State Warriors. This might have been the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors if not for the blown 3-1 lead against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. The 2016 team won 73 games during the regular season. And now you're all wondering, so we might as well dive down the rabbit hole. Had the postseason ended while Golden State had a 3-1 advantage in the finals, its team rating during the playoffs would have still kept it just outside the top 10. These Warriors from 1 year prior weren't quite as dominant during the first 82 games of the year, even if they only dropped 15 games from start to finish. But they didn't experience many issues while storming their way to a title, losing only 5 combined times to the New Orleans Pelicans, Memphis Grizzlies, Houston Rockets, and Cleveland Cavaliers. This 2014-2015 team had a regular season record of 67-15. Sure, there were tests along the way, but they also lent themselves nicely to unforgettable moments, like Stephen Curry knocking down a corner three with his eyes closed as Anthony Davis stretched out his pterodactyl limbs in a fruitless attempt to prevent overtime. The first championship-winning Warriors squad of the modern era didn't quite have the air of invincibility it came to possess the next 2 years, but it still left little doubt about its overwhelming superiority. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over New Orleans Pelicans, 4-2 victory over Memphis Grizzlies, 4-1 victory over Houston Rockets, and a 4-2 victory over Cleveland Cavaliers to win the NBA championship. Number 9, the 1998-1999 San Antonio Spurs. Don't hold the Spurs' regular season record against them. Not only were they granted fewer opportunities to win games because a lockout shortened the schedule, but the uncertainty of that period also forced them to undergo more in-season adjustments and drop unnecessarily high numbers of contests. It's indisputable that San Antonio was on the track to go 61-21 if the season had lasted full 82 games. Their regular season record was 37-13, but 8 of their 13 losses came in the first 14 outings, which again speaks to the need for constant adjustments when coming out of the lockout scenario. After dropping to 6-8, they finished the year on a 31-5 tier, which would prorate to a 71-11 during a full season. Then they just kept rolling through the postseason field. David Robertson and a young Tim Duncan led the charge, but they weren't the only quality players on this roster. Mario Elie, Sean Elliott, Avery Johnson, and others played big parts. The duo bigs helped spark massive leads, and everyone else helped hold off the opposition, which is why few teams were able to consistently test one of the greatest defenses in the NBA history. According to NBA Math's era adjusted ratings, only 11 teams have ever posted adjusted defensive rating that is better than the Spurs. And they also maintained their stinginess against a tougher slate of postseason matchups. In the postseason, they had a 3-1 victory over Minnesota Timberwolves, 4-0 victory over Los Angeles Lakers, 4-0 victory over Portland Trail Blazers, and a 4-1 victory over New York Knicks. Number 8, the 1985-1986 Boston Celtics. Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, Bill Walton. The talent on this version of the Boston Celtics was just ridiculous, and the same was true of the collective brainpower. Look how many members of this roster went on to hold front office jobs or pace the sidelines as a head coach. Boston used the regular season to establish itself as a dominant two-way force and finish first in defensive rating and behind only the Los Angeles Lakers and Dallas Mavericks in the offensive counterpart. Then it got even deadlier during the playoffs by pacing the postseason field on defense and trailing just the Lakers offensively. The Big Three, one of the first of its kind in the modern era, was undeniably fearsome. But Boston's depth of talent went so far beyond Bird, McHale, and Parrish, to the point that Johnson could take over games on both ends while Walton was able to throw up big performances for the second unit. It took 37 points from Dominique Wilkins from the Atlanta Hawks to avoid a sweep and forced Game 5 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Number 7. The 1986 to 1987 Los Angeles Lakers. What time is it? Showtime. Led by Magic Johnson, the Los Angeles Lakers played some of the most entertaining basketball of the association has ever seen through the 1980s, highlighted by this squad that earned the 4 out of the 5 rings LA claimed during the decade. The title-winning teams from 1980, 1982, 1985, and 1988 were certainly fun, but none can touch the dominance of this iteration. Johnson was in peak form and averaging 23.9 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 12.2 assists while shooting 52.2% from the field. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Byron Scott, and AC Green joined him in the starting 5 almost every night, as the purple and gold suffered remarkably few injuries from the start to finish. And that's not where the excessive riches ended, since Michael Cooper, Kurt Rambis, Michael Thompson, Wes Matthews, and Billy Thompson provide more than enough depth. Most teams didn't stand a chance, as the Lakers coasted through the regular season with a margin victory of 9.3 points. They had a 65-7 regular season record, and that didn't change in the playoffs. They only got better and upped the margin to 11.4 points and lost only 3 games en route to a title, 2 of which came against a Boston Celtics team still in the midst of its prime. Los Angeles has boosted so many high-quality squads through franchise history. 16 of them even earned rings, but none were this good from the start of the regular season through the playoffs final contest. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over Denver Nuggets, 4-1 victory over Golden State Warriors, 4-0 victory over Seattle Supersonics, and a 4-2 victory over Boston Celtics. Number 6. The 2008 to 2009 Cleveland Cavaliers. Not every great team wins a championship. The Cavaliers were a real threat in the 2008 season and destroyed their Eastern Conference foes until they ran into Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic. They just couldn't contain the big man. He averaged 25.8 points and 13 rebounds during the Eastern Conference Finals, while he was surrounded by so many great shooters, but that shouldn't spoil the Cavs' historic standing. This was not a great roster, according to data provided by the NBA Math. Their top 5 finishers in total points added were as follows: LeBron James, Mo Williams, Delonte West, Ben Wallace, and then Anderson Varejao. Every other player finished in the red. James was just that good. He pushed his team to finish the 4th in offensive rating and 3rd in points allowed per 100 possessions. But these Cavs weren't just regular season flukes. They had a 66-16 regular season record. They also thrived during the first 2 rounds of the playoffs by trouncing the overmatched Detroit Pistons and Atlanta Hawks so thoroughly that they earned 20.4 net rating heading into their unfortunate matchup with the Magics. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over Detroit Pistons, 4-0 victory over Atlanta Hawks, and then a 2-4 loss to the Orlando Magic. Number 5. The 2015 to 2016 San Antonio Spurs. Every team in NBA history has had a kryptonite. No one has found it for this 2014 to 2016 Golden State Warriors, nor did they for the 1995 to 96 Chicago Bulls, who won 72 games 2 decades before their record was toppled. But even those super squads possessed a weakness, if only because perfection is impossible in professional sports. The 2015-16 San Antonio Spurs had the misfortune of running into their kryptonite during the second round of the playoffs. They couldn't handle the overwhelming athleticism of the Oklahoma City Thunder and fell to Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant while depriving the world of a legendary clash between themselves and the record-breaking Dubs. But don't let that prevent you from recognizing their power. The Spurs still won 67 games during the regular season, most of them with ease, and had no trouble sweeping the Memphis Grizzlies to open the Western Conference playoffs. Kawhi Leonard had become a full-fledged superstar. Tim Duncan was playing like a Defensive Player of the Year threat during his final season. LaMarcus Aldridge, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Danny Green, Patty Mills, and so many others contributed to the two-way system that originally helped shape San Antonio into a dynastic force. They just couldn't handle the athleticism from every position, and that deprived them of a chance to truly seal their legacy with the Golden State Clash. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over Memphis Grizzlies and a 2-4 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Number 4. The 1990 to 1991 Chicago Bulls. This wasn't quite the same squad that completed the second three-peat of the 1990s. It was, however, the one that finally got Michael Jordan over the hump and pushed him past the Detroit Pistons in a 4-0 fashion, no less, and into the NBA Finals, where he'd famously failed to ever drop a series. Dennis Rodman wasn't on the Chicago Bulls, nor were Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, or the other role players who helped later versions of the Bulls to more titles. But Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Horace Grant were enough to make this unit an all-time great, even if B.J. Armstrong, John Paxson, Will Perdue, and Bill Cartwright were the next best players. They had a regular season record of 61-21. Truthfully, Jordan alone may have gotten the job done. The greatest shooting guard in NBA history was on a mission throughout the 1990-91 campaign, and he still possessed every ounce of athleticism imaginable. He averaged 31.5 points a game, 6.0 rebounds, and 5.5 assists during the regular season, then upped those numbers to 31.1, 6.4, and 8.4 in the playoffs. But what made this squad truly impressive was how it elevated its play during the playoffs. The Bulls lost 2 games by a combined 4 points, and their net rating skyrocketed from 9.4 through 82 games to 13.3 in the 17 it took to hold up the trophy. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over New York Knicks, 4-1 victory over Philadelphia 76ers, 4-0 victory over Detroit Pistons, and a 4-1 victory over Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3. The 2016 to 2017 Golden State Warriors. Allow the Warriors to exemplify the jam-packed nature of the top of these standings. Prior to Game 4 of the 2017 NBA Finals, the Dubs sat in the number 1 spot, set to become the greatest team of all time from a purely objective standpoint. But the blowout loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers knocked them below the 2 squads yet to show up, and the 9-point margin in the follow-up affair prevented an ascent back the hierarchy, even if it clinched the franchise's second title in a 3-year span. Still, consider these Warriors one of the 3 teams with a legitimate claim to the historical crown. Did we expect anything else? Golden State played with an air of inevitability through the season, the natural byproduct of adding Kevin Durant to a team that had just won a record-setting 73 games during the previous go-round. The presence of the eventual Finals MVP gave the Warriors 2 of the league's 5 best players, as well as Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner Draymond Green, one of the greatest shooters ever, Klay Thompson, and a veteran bench capable of providing big minutes in key situations. Somehow, Golden State even avoided a major adjustment period. The Durant fit was nearly seamless along the other superstars, and it allowed the Dubs to start out the year in a sterling fashion. They never looked back at the 29-point Spurs game loss on opening night and caught their stride during postseason action, in which no team proved capable of hanging tough. They had a 67-15 regular season record. There was help along the way, of course. Zaza Pachulia's contest of Kawhi Leonard jumper in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, whether dirty or not, made the path significantly easier. So, too, did injuries suffered by the Utah Jazz. But what team in NBA history hasn't received a bit of aid along the way? Championships are almost always convergences of skill and good fortune. This was still Golden State's season, and no one was ever going to stand in its way. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over the Portland Trail Blazers, 4-0 victory over Utah Jazz, a 4-0 victory over San Antonio Spurs, and a 4-1 victory over Cleveland Cavaliers. Number 2. The 1995 to 1996 Chicago Bulls. Commonly referred to as the greatest team in NBA history because they won a then record 72 games and backed up their regular season exploits with a title. The 1995 Chicago Bulls may be popping up sooner than you expected. They had a regular season record of 72-10. The 2015 to 2016 Golden State Warriors, who broke the unbreakable record, they're down in 10th place. Chicago still rolled its way through the playoff field, but it should never have dropped a game to the New York Knicks, who went 47-35 that year. Losing twice against the star-studded Sonics team is more understandable, but the 3 total losses prevented the postseason from matching what came first, if only barely. In the postseason, they had a 4-0 victory over Miami Heat, 4-1 victory over New York Knicks, 4-0 victory over Orlando Magic, and a 4-2 victory over Seattle Supersonics. And finally, our number 1 spot, the 1970 to 1971 Milwaukee Bucks. Though the 1970 Milwaukee Bucks are rarely billed as one of the greatest teams in NBA history, the numbers all back up that type of status. They won 66 games during the regular season, then advanced through the playoffs with only 2 losses en route to a championship. Though the Los Angeles Lakers broke that mark 1 year later with 3 additional regular season victories, that was, at the time, the second most successful team had ever been, behind only the 1966 to 1967 Philadelphia 76ers with a 68-13 loss. Digging deeper shows these Bucks should have had even fewer losses. Pythagorean wins, which are based solely on points scored and allowed, indicates their deserved record was 67-16. And since they paced the association in offensive rating, 3.4 points per 100 possessions clear of the field, and defensive rating of 0.2 points per 100 possessions better than anyone else, it shouldn't be surprising that their team rating during the regular seasons remains one of the 3 best marks in the league. Also, making the success less surprising is the overwhelming strength of the roster. Lou Alcindor, later Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, was a dominant sophomore, while Oscar Robertson played the part of a veteran leader and all-star during the tail end of his career. And the talent didn't stop there. Given the presences of Bob Dandridge, John McLaughlin, Greg Smith, Bob Boozer, and Lucius Allen, all notable names during the 1970s. Few teams have ever been so deep, especially when compared to the relative depth of the area which they played. In the postseason, they had a 4-1 victory over the San Francisco Warriors, 4-1 victory over Los Angeles Lakers, and a 4-0 victory over the Baltimore Bullets. Thanks for watching. Click the NBA Underground icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly funny NBA lip readings. See you guys next week.